my colleague Shri Meghwal, the Secretary of the Department of Financial Services, Mrs. Anjali Chief Duggal, Chairman Shri S.K. Roy, Mr. Sharma, Sangwan, and friends. Today is the commencement of the Diamond Jubilee celebration of the Life Insurance Corporation. Created in 1956, you have completed 60 years of a very successful and an eventful journey. There is an Indian tradition to celebrate 60 years. Because 60 years was conventionally considered a landmark in one's life. I think in several parts of the country, including Maharashtra, when an individual turns 60, it's an event, Shishti Purti. Probably they thought at that stage that's a ripe old age of maturity. But these days people still at 60 consider themselves to be young. But in an organization like the LIC, the last 60 years you've been actually witness to the evolution of modern Indian history. You were born in an environment where you were created as a monopoly organization. When the government decided in 1956 to nationalize all existing insurance companies, and Mr. Deshmukh gave that speech, which has been quoted repeatedly since morning, probably the intention was that insurance was a business so sacrosanct that only governments or state instrumentalities can do that. Private individuals could not be trusted as insurers. But then that was the trend of the world and the thinking of the world probably in the 1950s. And by the turn of the century, we decided that competition produces the best, whether it is commercial organizations or commercial organizations with a social purpose, which the LIC was. So you've played both the innings. You grew as a monopoly organization, and you've also spent a decade and a half now in a more competitive environment. Ordinarily, the impression of those who grew and prospered in a monopoly environment has been that they have found it extremely difficult to sustain in a competitive environment. In a competitive environment, always the private sector has inherent advantages. The private sector is free from bureaucratic controls. The private sector can take market-centric decisions and take them in deliver them quickly. State instrumentalities are bound by various forms of processes and regulations, and therefore their functioning is constrained. But I'm glad amongst the very few instrumentalities of the state which grew and prospered in a monopoly environment, LIC stands as a shining example of those which continued to remain by a mile almost as the market leader even in a competitive environment. And LIC has been created literally as a monolith. If you were a company listed on the stock exchange, perhaps you will be the most valuable company in India's market, one of the most formidable ones in the world itself. And your performance itself illustrates that. The size of your assets is huge. Your employees, your presence at thousands of places, your network of agents and development officers, your ability to reach almost every individual who has the ability to get insured. I think it's a network which is unmatched in India even today. And your functioning has many expanses. One of the great challenges that India has is, and that's a challenge which we have to overcome as we grow, when we evolve from a developing society into a developed society as an economy, that our parameters of social security have to significantly improve. And when parameters of social security have to significantly improve, becoming a pensioned society and becoming an insured society is one great aspect and component of that social security. We still haven't realized as a society how essential is it to evolve as a society which has an adequate social security cover. If I look at the last 1 year, I have two glaring examples. One of our project proposals in the budget last year, early this year, which had to be rolled back, actually provided for encouragement to a pension, so to becoming a pension society amongst private sector employees. The value of that was not fully realized. Even in the report of the 7th Pay Commission, which we are recommending, the 7th Pay Commission had recommended a certain scheme for all government employees of the 7th Pay Commission, in the 7th Pay Commission, where a minimal deduction would lead to a great social security being given to them upon retirement. The unions were almost unanimous in opposing them. But I have no doubt in my mind that the more we look at the models of development elsewhere in the world, slowly this resistance itself would fade away and we'll realize the value of social security. And that is why organizations like the LIC and other insurance companies will not only have greater relevance in the years to come, but their businesses are also going to expand. There is hardly anyone in a certain sector of society whose life is untouched by the expanse of the LIC. People built houses with the support of LIC 50 years ago. Widows and children of deceased persons managed to survive on the strength of policies which people had taken in the course of their lives. And that is why one of our commitments now is, how do we gradually make India into more and more an insured society? Mrs. Duggal just now referred to specified employment sectors, including self-employment, where crores of individuals are going through specific policies. So besides life insurance, 29 crore policies. I am told over and above these 29 crore policies, there are some 12 crore group insurances which larger groups are covered by. And over the last few years, the government also has been coming out gradually with suggestions implemented through LIC and other JIC companies. So the low-cost insurance policies with regard to accident, which have become extremely popular amongst the weaker sections of society. The life insurance on a moderate premium being paid every year, again very popular amongst the weaker sections of society. This year in the union budget, though not directly connected with the LIC, I announced the crop insurance policies. So in the event of an inadequate crop or a crop failure, the farmer is not driven to suicide. There is a state subsidized crop insurance policy available to his advantage. The Ministry of Health is now in the process of preparing health insurance up to a minimum cover of maximum of up to a cover of 1 lakh rupees, which will cover for hospitalization the 1/3 poorest sections of Indian society, again with state support. Last year's budget, we took over all the unutilized monies in various funds, contributory funds lying with the government, and used that as a corpus for a health scheme for senior citizens who could not afford their own treatment. Now, these are various instruments which are being created, where from life insurance to an accident claim, to crop, to health, in addition to the specific sectors which were being mentioned, where different segments get covered in order to make India more and more an insured society. I think this is just an elementary beginning. As the economy picks up over the next several years, the need for its deeper penetration, its greater expansion, and its expansion in terms of size and quantums itself will also have to increase. And I think one of the measures of what constitutes a developed economic society is how well it can look after its citizens in the event of a personal crisis that any one of them faces. The LIC, as I said in the very beginning, can look back the last 60 years with a sense of satisfaction. You won over the trust of your policyholders, and the fact that you have a very high, almost a 99.7% settlement rate on claims. And I'm sure that 0.3%, which is the area of dispute, would be where there would be a dispute inter, say, the claimants themselves. I think is a measure of your own credibility. And as you grow over the next decade or two, you'll probably have to discover products and policies which are more innovative, more supportive, and therefore which pursue this social purpose for which you were created. There is also another untold story of the LIC's contribution. It's not merely the lucrative dividend which was paid just now to the government. The LIC itself becomes a very large investor. It's an investor in India's growth story. And the LIC's ability to utilize this large corpus to contribute to India's growth story itself is huge. And I'm sure decade after decade, as you progress, not only will the LIC's own assets increase, its operations increase, you will continue to maintain your seat as the leader of the insurance companies, contribute to a larger welfare as far as your policyholders are concerned, increase the penetration and depth of India to become an insured society, and utilize this entire resource for India's development story. I compliment the LIC for what it has achieved in the last 60 years, and I wish all of you and all your thousands and thousands of employees and agents all over the country a very great future. Thank you very much.